Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. I'm your host, George Kerth, joined by the one and only Cody Roadcap. Cody, it's the kind of annoying bye week between the preseason and the regular season, but cut down day just happened. It's starting to feel pretty real over here. How are you?
I'm doing good. I believe if we were in Hollywood, we would call this the penultimate week of the NFL
That's too big
offseason.
of a word for me. I'm out.
Okay, well, it's a very rare that I'm using the big words on here, but doing great. I had 4 drafts this weekend, 2 more this weekend. I know you have a draft to get to after we're done recording, so we are in the center of fantasy draft season and could not be more excited.
And in the middle of draft season, we had the drafts for the Couch GMs World Cup back on Sunday night. And that's going to be a big part of this show, is we're going to break down the 3 drafts and show you how, even if you prepare, you have to stay fluid, because 3 drafts with the same exact scoring settings can go completely different. And we're going to give some of our favorite picks and more tips for you to get through your drafts as we finish up the offseason going into the regular season. We also got to hit some news. Make sure you find us on our social medias at the Couch GMs, and you can join our Discord chat in the link. The link is in the description of the video or podcast you're watching or listening to. Cody, why don't we check out that news? Sit back, relax, and chat. Big news coming out of the NFL on Tuesday. We know the Indianapolis Colts gave Jonathan Taylor's agent a deadline of the cut down time on Tuesday to find a trade. Apparently, they did not find a trade that Colts ownership found as appropriate compensation for Jonathan Taylor, and he was not traded by that deadline. And they placed him on the physically unable to perform list, meaning he will miss at least the first 4 games of the regular season. Now, I am someone who did not buy any stock of Jonathan Taylor in the drafts that I've had so far. But for the people that have, this is a unexpected and pretty big blow. I guess we should start off with implications on what you do if you have Jonathan Taylor already and this now happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, it was very unexpected, and I think we just kind of overshadowed, the fact that that he was technically on PUP, or he might have been on NFI and they moved into PUP. I don't remember the exact details, but he was not practicing. He was not playing. They were talking about it. He's coming off of an ankle injury. There was some rumblings of a back. So hindsight, it's kind of surprising that he goes on PUP for sure, and that's why he was being drafted in the second round. Definitely hurts if you did to him. Luckily, you probably didn't spend a first round pick on him. And if he comes back in 4 weeks, it's not the end of the world. You can make do with what you got. Because I would imagine if you're a listener of this show and you took Jonathan Taylor, you at least had some speculations to not like make him your hero running back strategy or anything like that. You were taking some flyers on some other guys, maybe guys you weren't hoping to start right away. You might have to these up and coming weeks. I do find it mind-boggling that they don't want to give him a contract, but they had 2 offers reportedly, but none of them met enough value for what the player they were losing, but they don't want to give that player a contract. It just blows my mind, whole dynamic there.
And I mean, all we hear is speculation until like a trade's final, but we have heard there were multiple offers, including second round picks, and they were trying to hold out for a first round pick. So where is the line between, like you said, a guy they don't want to give a contract to, but is valuable enough that a second round pick isn't enough compensation? It almost sounds like bitterness at this point, and I hate to be the guy to throw all the shade coming right out the bat here. Jim Irsay is becoming Jerry Jones.
I mean, he was kind of already there. He was
He's
just
worse now. I mean, I should say
I
he's pushing it.
but I mean, this isn't all Jim Irsay. Like, Chris Ballard, their GM, was the ones like, yeah, it's not enough compensation. And yeah, there seems to be
But
some
why
disconnect between
but why do we
ownership.
seem to always hear that, like, all these comments are coming from Jim Irsay? I haven't heard Chris Ballard's name hardly at all in this whole entire conversation. It's like their owner's their GM and their GM's their puppet master. I should say their
I
puppet.
don't know. I don't know. I think Chris Ballard has a pretty big say in that organization, always has. And while I just think Jim Irsay is more vocal. I think he's up there, but I do think because Chris Ballard was reported was the one that said he didn't get enough. And to your point though, Chris Ballard could also, and because we're not on the inside, I'll give him his dues. He could be on the side campaigning to keep Jonathan Taylor to Jim Irsay, and he's fighting that battle. We don't know that, so I don't want to
True.
say to your point, it could very much be just Jim Irsay like, oh no, and Chris Ballard's like, no, look, this is the guy we got, because not very often do you have a draft pick. I mean, yes, Jonathan Taylor is, an elite talent, but he's in the running back class that he needs a big contract. He was a second round pick, and you were offered essentially a second round pick for him. You could have got the same value you took him, and it's all confusing to me. I'm really interested to see how the next 4 weeks play out. Like, is he back in 4 weeks, or is this like another guy that we'll talk about in a minute going to PUP that's probably just going to sit the whole season out? Like, I'm very interested to see how this one plays out for sure. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But Jonathan Taylor, you mentioned you didn't take any shares of him. Did you take any shares of the other guys in Indianapolis? I know Deion Jackson was a name I saw getting plucked at the end of some late round drafts. I know I've been stashing Zach Moss. I think he might actually start on short term IR. But I
Mm-hmm.
think he might be a guy to come back with. So using that IR spot, like in the league, I didn't draft a kicker because I drafted him. Wanted to see if he goes to IR and then pick up my kicker that way. But what are your thoughts on the backfield now that Jonathan Taylor's at least not playing the first 4 games, and maybe not at all?
The interesting thing is, so I'm trying to look and see if I can find their updated depth chart. It looks like they only kept 3 running backs on the roster, and Zach Moss is on the active roster to start. My pluck, I mostly had shares in dynasty leagues from last year in Deion Jackson that I kind of just held on to, thinking like, oh, if anything happens, I have a feeling Deion Jackson's the guy. But it kind of seems like Zach Moss could be. So if you're someone out there that has Jonathan Taylor, maybe see if you can go stash both. If you're going to stash one, I guess the leader in the clubhouse is Zach Moss. But if you have that gut feeling that it's Deion Jackson, we don't necessarily know for sure. Just go get somebody, especially now because you should have the extra roster spot with moving Jonathan Taylor to your reserve. Hopefully your league has that. If you didn't already put him there already, because as Cody said, he was already technically on PUP or NFI or something like that beforehand.
Yes, he should have been eligible in some leagues to be already moved.
Mhm.
But to your point, I just want to remind everyone out there, if you're not super familiar with, cut down day and IR and all that stuff, to be placed, if you were placed on injury reserve today or any time, or I say today until 4 o'clock or any time previous this offseason, your season is over. There's no can come back. If you made the initial 53, like a guy like Zach Moss, who is dealing with a little bit of an injury, uh, did for the Indianapolis Colts, he can be put on IR tomorrow, and then he can be activated in a couple weeks. Is it 3 or 4 games?
I
I
think
don't
it's
remember what.
3.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's 3 weeks now
And
for
4 for
short-term
PUP.
IR and 4 for
Yeah.
PUP. But PUP is 4 games for those few teams. Well, I don't think they have week 4 buys anymore, but they used to. Uh,
Depends on the year.
yeah, for sure. But so Zach Moss, and then that makes Deion Jackson, and then don't rule out the undrafted free agent. He looked pretty good in preseason, Null, and we know he comes from Shane Steichen, who likes to use running backs by committee. So it could just be a committee approach, and without Jonathan Taylor, it's a crapshoot each week on who's going to get the touchdown or who's going to get the bulk of the carries.
Definitely, but go out there and take a stab if you're a Jonathan Taylor owner, as that's most likely the backfield that you will have the most success in. There's probably not a lot of carries left out there on free agency that we know of after your drafts. We can get back to running backs in the next segment, moving on to some other players notable that started the season on physically unable to perform. Von Miller is one of those, the pass rusher for the Buffalo Bills, who we did kind of expect this with him coming off of the season-ending injury last year. But we don't know how long he'll be on there. Missing 4 weeks, could come right off after that. could be a big spark to Buffalo as we get towards the middle part of the season. And Kyler Murray was the guy that Cody was referring to earlier as somebody who started the season on PUP, may actually be ready to play at some point this season, but there's a good chance it looks like Arizona is going to sit him for the entire season on PUP and just go for it next year. Any reason to go out there and throw a flyer stab at a Kyler Murray and stash him, or just not worth it?
I mean, I have him in one league, and that was just because I could throw him instantly in the IR. He wasn't drafted in another league or a couple other leagues I did this weekend. So it's not like I'm go out get. They have a pretty bad roster as is. So unless they come out and surprise people, like that's the only way I think he even plays. And to answer your question probably better. So yes, in the one league I do have him and stashed him, but if I also have Zach Moss in that league. He goes to IR, and that was, I only had 2 IR spots, and I had to cut someone for someone later. I'd cut Kyler Murray. Like it's more of just like a wait and see, but it's not like a pressing. And even if he does come back, like it's an ACL, it's probably not even worth the hold. In all honesty.
So the fact that Zach Moss, who should technically be a backup running back, is more valuable to hold in a reserve spot than Kyler Murray should tell you a lot of things out there as fantasy owners. But never know if there's a chance. If you hear he gets activated, go out there and grab him off free agency if he's still sitting out there, but maybe not worth the stash in the reserve spot. Cut down day. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say with the the Kyler Murray thing, also like this is where you can pay attention in your fantasy leagues. Maybe your week 3, you add him to your waivers for a $0 fab, or you just pick him up and then throw him in your IR that week or something like a week or 2 before the PUP to see what happens. That way you can get ahead of it, but you're not wasting the spot. I know it's an IR stash, so it's not as big if it's he's waiting a couple weeks to come back, but that's another option you can do for Kyler Murray.
That's a good call. That's something I hadn't thought of there. So thank you for that advice there, Cody. As we said, cut down day was Tuesday. We got to talk about Cody adding to the rundown as I'm talking, really throwing me off now. Talk about some of the biggest surprise cuts. I'm going to start off with the New England Patriots and the quarterback position. Now, we know it's not going to stay this way, but let me just quick read down the quarterback depth chart for the New England Patriots. Mac Jones. That's it. They cut not only their young quarterback, those are 3, I'm forgetting the name at the moment, it's not in front of me, but also Bailey Zappi, who was even a dark horse to be a starter after all the hatred on Mac Jones at the end of last year and such. Is this something that they're going to go out there and try to find one of these quarterbacks that like veterans that got cut, or what are you thinking is happening with this Bailey Zappi situation?
Dude, I keep thinking, and like I don't want to I'm not going to put any speculation out there because I have no idea, but I keep there has to be like another news drop later. Like this one just doesn't make sense at all. Yeah, you have Mac Jones there, but like he's proved serviceable last year. He won you a couple games. He didn't have that bad of a preseason from what I could tell. Like this one really surprises me, and I'm very interested to see how many people put in like waiver requests for him because like what's out there right now, like Tim Boyle, he got cut from the Jets. Like, is that what they're going after? Did Marcus Mariota made it through? Did he not?
He did.
Tanner McKee, like, did he get cut? You're the Eagles fan.
He is still through as well. Yeah.
So they kept all 3 of those guys. Like, who's out there? Like, are they going to go sign Carson Wentz to be their backup because it's free agency? Like, wouldn't you rather have Bailey Zappi? Like, there feels like there's something missing to this story. Maybe he just like said the wrong thing to Bill Belichick and he had enough. Again, I don't want to speculate. I don't know, but there feels like there's something missing.
The only other guy I can think of you didn't name there is Colt McCoy. Colt McCoy is out there because he was cut by the Cardinals. But again, somebody that like, why would I go out there and get veteran backup, career backup Colt McCoy as opposed to Bailey Zappi, who is a young guy with at least like a little bit of unknown potential here with enough success in the games he played last year that there's a good chance he's going to get swept up. He's not going to make it to your practice squad. The only situation I can think of in my head that was similar to this was last year, the Dallas Cowboys only kept one quarterback on their roster. but it was Dak Prescott, someone with a higher ceiling than Mac Jones in all likelihood. And then their two backup quarterbacks were just very bleh. And they end up obviously having to activate them because there was an injury to Dak Prescott for a short period of time. But you saw how bad they had to scramble for that, and how many teams you thought maybe were going to snipe a quarterback off of their practice squad because that would have just put them into a scramble. Like, it doesn't seem like a smart move, especially without an established quarterback. Like, if they still had Tom Brady and pulled this, whatever, sure. But I don't think Mac Jones should keep them comfortable enough to want to go out there and just see like, oh, it doesn't matter what we end up with QB2. If our QB2 gets sniped on waivers, it's whatever. There's not enough out there, and he's not an established enough quarterback.
Yeah, I guess I don't even look at it as, an established quarterback when it comes to Mac Jones. Like, for me, it's the value of Bailey Zappi. And am I saying he's like the next starting quarterback that's going to win 12 games? Absolutely not. But like, to your point with the Dallas Cowboys, like when Cooper Rush got, you know, waived last year, they only kept Dak Prescott. Like, Cooper Rush didn't have waiver market. Like, if I'll be even more surprised than I was that it got cut if Bailey Zappi makes it through 31 teams of waivers and makes it back to the Patriots practice squad or gets re-signed for him. Like, that would surprise me even more than, I would expect another team to take a look at him.
Heck, I mean, I talked about Colt McCoy. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals put a claim in on him.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a bad option. I mean, they have Josh Downs and not Downs, Dobbs. Downs is the wide
Dobbs.
receiver for the Colts, and then Clayton Tune, the
Um,
rookie out of Houston. So they could take
yeah,
fire on Bailey Zappi.
and they've got David Blau, but we have all seen David Blau has not been anything special either.
For sure. But that was probably the surprise cut. Like, I put on the rundown any others, but like, honestly, I don't think there's any that can come close or top what Bailey Zappi was. I feel like for the most part, it was a pretty normal day when it came to cuts. There were a lot of trades. I felt like, especially for kickers. So we can talk about the kickers that were traded, and we'll just throw all the trades together. So the Eagles, they traded for former tight end Albert Big O.
Owegbunam?
Yeah, I wasn't going to try.
I
So
got
they
you.
traded for him, which, once again, Harry Roseman continues to play chess while the rest of the teams play checkers. The Broncos are going to waive him. They're like, hey, and knowing that they have the 31st waiver, they're like, wait a second, we'll give you a sixth for Big O and a seventh. So basically nothing to beat the waiver process. So shout out to Howie Roseman for, again, being one of the top GMs in the league, which I'm sure would just send Tyler, if he was with us, into a tizzy. We're going to use that word today.
That's a good one.
And then the kickers, there was 3 kickers traded. Dustin Hopkins was traded to the Chargers. That was about a day or two ago. By the time you're listening to this,
he was traded from the Chargers.
From the Chargers to the Browns.
There you
I'll
go.
get this right. Will Lutz reunites with Sean Payton as he was traded to the Broncos from the Saints, and then Nick Folk was traded from the Patriots to the Titans. All for like late day 3 picks. Interesting to see the kickers moving around. Obviously, some teams need them, and some teams have 2, which is fun to see. Trades are definitely exciting. I know you're an Eagles fan, so you'll probably the Big O one, but any of those kickers, move them for you at all?
I mean, I guess the Chargers moving Hopkins doesn't seem like a big deal because they already had Cameron Dicker, who was performing just as well. I feel like playoff teams are the ones that really get under the radar when it comes to, kicker play. So the Titans are the one that come to mind to me when you're getting not only Nick Folk has all that playoff success, kicking in the weather from New England. I know he's getting up there in age, but going down there to a team that is hoping to compete for the division and maybe even in the playoffs, getting a solid kicker seems like a necessity for them, and they've been struggling for years. The Broncos hoping to come back, into relevance. That Will Lutz thing is a solid move, but I feel like the Titans with the most recent success is the one that stands out the most to me. Plus, they get the guy with the biggest pedigree.
Yeah, I think Will Lutz has been underrated as a kid, so I really like that move for the Broncos. It is interesting.
But
He's not. the third kicker since McManus, and that was just this offseason. They haven't played a game since they.
Is it worth noting he's going from a division where he plays in domes pretty much all the time to going to kicking in Mile High?
Mile High is like the cheat code of outdoor domes, so I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, he has a strong leg, so, and he's been pretty accurate. I know he's dealt with some injuries too in the past, but I think that's a good pickup for the Broncos for whatever they're going to be this year. But we don't have to too much talk about kickers. You shouldn't even play with them in fantasy football. Two more quick notes. There's some holdouts that I think are worth mentioning, not so much for fantasy, but just in terms of the NFL. One has been talked about a lot, and one I think is gone completely under the radar unless you're a fan of that team. But that is Chris Jones, the defensive tackle, best player on defense for the Kansas City Chiefs. And he said he's willing to hold out till week 8 until he gets so, and he's losing a bunch of money because of the new CBA. They can't erase that, but he's willing to hold out for a contract. So Chris Jones is the one that's been talked about. But Nick Bosa for the San Francisco 49ers, he's been holding out all offseason. I don't think really anybody's talked about it too much.
Nope.
They're not sure he's going to play week 1. They don't know what he's going to. I know the 49ers been one of the top drafted offense is. Now he's in a little bit different situation. He's not getting, or his fines can be waived, if I understand correctly, because he's still on his rookie deal. So there's like a clause in, so maybe that's why he's like not actually losing money. But even their GM was like, yeah, I don't like the situation. He's holding out, and that was a top fantasy defense. So if you're banking on the 49ers, but they don't have arguably their best player on defense, that could be a tough loss. Granted, they have some still easy matches, which one they're probably still worth starting, but maybe not taking in like round 10 like we've seen in some drafts.
Not necessarily. I mean, they had, I think, 3 guys in the top 10 in pressures last year, so it wasn't just Bosa, and then they went out and added Javon Hargrave too. So it's not like they were a one-trick pony. I mean, Bosa's the leader of the pack there, but they got a lot of other dudes on that defense.
Yeah, but I look at it more as, so like Pittsburgh's really good at getting pressure when they have TJ Watt, and then it's not like they can't get sacks, but they definitely take a step back without him. And I think the 49ers defensive front will be similar if Nick Bosa doesn't play. I mean, there's still time. Like I said, there's still 2 weeks to the first week of the season. They could figure something out, and he could be out there because Nick Bosa's staying in shape. So it's not like, him missing training camp would be a big deal. But wanted to bring that to your attention. And before we wrap up our news, have to end on a good note when it comes to cutdown day. Damar Hamlin did make the 53-man roster, which some people might not find that surprising since he was a starter last year. But with all his medical stuff he went through, he was actually, a backup special teamer as he was working his way back to the field. So not surprising that Damar Hamlin made it, but to come full circle to where we were, what was that, week 16 last year to cut down day this year with Damar Hamlin has been an incredible journey to follow, and a great story for him, the NFL, and I'm glad to see that he's at a spot where he'll be playing football this fall.
100% happy to see him back on the field for a regular season game soon. But Cody, we mentioned it in the beginning of the show. Why don't we look at some of these World Cup drafts? All right, fun transition to the screen where we have 3 full draft boards that we're going to be showing you on the board. So if you guys do not know, the Couch GMs World Cup is our little project that we're doing that we have put together essentially a 30-man league that we're going to be changing, rotating leagues every single year, trying to find who is the best fantasy player out of the 30 in that 4-year stretch. So you have 3 years of qualifying leagues, all redrafts. Winners automatically move on to the World Cup final, and then any remaining spots will go to the top performers and win percentage through the first 3 years. We just finished year 1's draft, and I think this was an interesting exercise to look at because we have 3 leagues that have the exact same settings. Everyone has the exact same goal, but the drafts still go completely different. And that's why we can look at some of these, find some outliers, and really show you maybe what strategies we liked, what strategies we didn't like, and show you how you have to stay fluid because we never know how draft's going to go.
Yeah, that's a great point too. And if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I'm not in the World Cup, so why do I care? Like George mentioned, there's a lot of things that we can extrapolate from these draft boards and work into your leagues.
Your
Two,
vocabulary is fantastic today.
I'm on a roll. And two, if you want to be in, the next iteration of the Couch GMs World Cup, make sure you follow along. And this, we're hoping to, as we grow, expand, to bring the World Cup into more of like a viewership standpoint of doing some bonus podcasts throughout the week, keeping you all updated. So even though you're not managing a team, you can follow along, get your favorite team just like you do every 4 years for when the soccer World Cup happens. But George brought up a good point. So if you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Make sure you subscribe. If you're not, if you're listening in the head over to YouTube, subscribe, and check it out. On your screen, you can see the 3 draft boards that we're scrolling through. And one thing, though, while they were all different and they all started at 6:30, if they all took different amounts of times, the one thing that was consistent was Justin Jefferson went number 1 overall, but that was it. After the first pick in all 3 leagues, things started to change here. So, George, I'll open it up to you. If there's anything that first jumps out to you, if there's any league, so there's Group A, which is on the screen right now. If you need me to move over to Group B, Group C, just let me know. But what was the biggest takeaway you had from the World Cup drafts?
I'll start at the top and we'll kind of work our way down. So Christian McCaffrey, 2nd overall pick in Group A, as you guys can see on your screen. I'm going to look over. He was 3rd overall pick in Group C, and I only jumped to Group C first because somehow he fell all the way to pick 6 in Group B. So I don't know exactly what it is about the Group B draft that people just didn't like Christian McCaffrey. We saw Austin Eckler and Nick Chubb go before him in Group B, as opposed to he was the first running back taken in the other 2. Group C had Jamar Chase go pick 2 instead of a running back. But that was the first thing that was interesting to me. So, like, you can be the person that's like, I like my tier 1 of Justin Jefferson and Christian McCaffrey, but I didn't get pick 1 or 2. You never know how far a guy's going to fall. So, like, prepare for the fact that, like, oh, there's a good chance that McCaffrey's going in the top 3 in every single draft. Justin Jefferson's going 1 pretty much every single draft, but you could have a surprise and have someone fall to you.
Absolutely. You're talking about someone falling to me, and that same thing about being fluid, being able to adapt. You can mock draft all you want, but you never know what's going to happen. And that same Group B, where Christian McCaffrey went, Jamar Chase went 7.
7.
He fell to me in that draft. I'm in Group B. George, is in Group C, and Tyler is in Group A. So everybody is playing with us, and we are all competing against each other. But to your point, Jamar Chase fell where he went, the 2nd pick in your group, and I believe the 3rd or 4th pick in Group A. I scrolled over, you could see. So, yes, very interesting on how these players went. I think one, the Travis Kelce effect, because some people view him as a top, even though he's the tight end, so you get that positional value bonus. He went and picked 4. I mean, he went top 5 in every league.
No, he went 6 in Group C.
He went 6 in
but
yours.
basically right there.
Right. And
higher than he's normally gone, because in previous years, the highest you really ever see him go is 8, normally like 10 or 11.
If I remember, like a month ago, like we were talking up Travis Kelce, and we were like, yeah, like, but still, like pick 5 is the ceiling, and in 2 drafts we have him going top 4. So like,
Yep.
That's the other thing too. Like drafts change every week, and I guarantee you, if we did this exercise again this weekend with after cut downs, after the Jonathan Taylor news, after some people get placed on IR that we weren't expecting, these 3 drafts would be entirely different. That's why we always are advocates to make sure you're drafting after the 3rd season game, and if you can, draft Labor Day weekend in that break in between preseason and the NFL season.
Yeah, and I think that's a good transition to the Jonathan Taylor thing, because we did say we would talk a little bit more fantasy implication on that. So, I mean, if you're drafting now post PUP news, I would assume he probably goes round 4, round 5. Sometimes he might even slide further if you have a league that's very skeptical. You can kind of back up where you think he's going to go, Cody. but I'm just trying to see here. So in Group A, Jonathan Taylor went 3-3. That's pick 23 overall. In Group B, Jonathan Taylor,
He went
if you see
2-9.
him, 2-9. So that's all right. That's even higher, round 2. And then in Group C, Jonathan Taylor went 3-7. So that was the lowest he went. I'm sure this person that took him in round 3 in Group C is like, I got the best value and I still feel like I got gypped, but he could end up working out for him in the end. Where do you think he falls to now that this is over?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And because of, where he was at ADP wise, I don't think he'll fall as far. But I would comp him to like an Alvin Kamara at this point. Alvin Kamara is suspended the first 3 games. He's coming off of an injury, didn't look the best last year, but has some, high upside still, even though he's a later age running back than Jonathan Taylor. So even if I'll use Group A as an example because that's the one on screen. Alvin Kamara went at 6'9". Nice. Jonathan Taylor went at
Nice.
3'3". I don't think in a week's time we're going to see that ADP drop to where he falls all the way to the 6th round. But round 4, round 5, I think would make more sense. And some leagues like he won't get touched. Like some leagues he won't just because he isn't
Group
going to play.
B, Alvin Kamara went round 8 instead of round 6 in the other 2. There's your example of that. You have to see, like, you could be like, oh, I think he could go round 6. But then, like, and you're like, I don't really want to touch him in round 6. But keep an eye on players that even you're like, I don't like him at his value. Because if he falls to round 7, round 8, then it's like, maybe this value is too good.
Yeah, and I would say after your first 4, maybe 5 rounds, depending if you're a 12-man or 10-man league, what your settings are. But if you're in your standard, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, tight end flex, or even 2 flexes, after you get to like through round 5, I think that's a lot of your taking higher upside guys, high flyers, and stuff like that. So if you have any inclination, or if you're a Colts fan, or if you're just like, dude, this is still Jonathan Taylor, he's going to come back in 4 weeks, or heck, he still might get traded to the Dolphins in between the next 4 weeks, and I'd really like him on that offense with their weapons. Like, go ahead and take him. You're taking a flyer. We see people in the 5th, 6th round all the time that like get cut halfway through the season and never pan out. Like it happens. That's part of fantasy football. So to George's point, don't be afraid to. You won't have to do it with Jonathan Taylor because his ADP won't reset in a week's time. But like Alvin Kamara, he was taken 6'9", but his ADP was lower because he was so low for so long until we got a final ruling. Like that's where you can scroll down. And to the other point though is if you're really bullish on they're still going to trade him, he's not playing. I want Deion Jackson. If you want to go get Deion Jackson in the 6th or 7th round, he's still way down in ADP and he won't adjust to a higher thing too. So that's the thing. Make sure you're paying attention to what your leagues are doing, but also don't be a, person that relies so much on your ADP. Once you get past round 5, go get the guys that you think can make a difference.
And I want to talk about Group B as a whole a little bit here. So if you want to scroll over to that, Cody, this draft was one of them that was the most interested to watch because it just happened to randomly fall this way. This group in general is very interesting where it's Tyler's wife, my now fiance, and a bunch of people who we have played in super competitive leagues with. So it's like a very experienced league with a couple other people who we might not have played a lot with, but we know, have a strong fantasy background. And I don't know if it's just the way that, rankings are falling this year. I don't know if it's just the way, like the waves of the draft that everyone was kind of following each other in this draft. Running backs got pushed down really far in this draft specifically. Once you hit the end of round 4, and even there's some running backs that went in round 4 that were going in rounds 2 and 3 before, but there's like a 1-round disparity, sometimes a 2-round disparity for pretty much every single back in this draft compared to the other 2. Examples like Alexander Madison went in round 6, pick 4 in Group B. He was going in round 5 in the other 2, I believe. Sometimes round 4, I could be mistaken. I don't know. I have to go back and peek at that a little bit more. The Alvin Kamara thing I already mentioned. He went super low. J.K. Dobbins as well. Like, I don't know if it was a draft, like a follow the leader kind of thing. Like a lot of wide receivers and tight ends and the earlier quarterbacks went in that league, and everyone kind of just followed in place. But that was something that, like, if somebody noticed a draft trend in about round 5, they could have snatched up a lot of solid mid-round backs. And if they were lucky enough to go wide receiver heavy early, they could have worked out. And I think, Cody, you're actually the team that looked like you could have pulled that off, taking Chase, Brown, Andrews as your first 3 picks, being able to follow up with Aaron Jones, Breece Hall, Alexander Madison as your next 3, going 0 running back and still grabbing running backs that I think are going to be completely solid for you.
Yeah, and then I still got Alvin Kamara in that league. Plus, then I was also able to add like a Chris Godwin down there later too. So there's definitely some, high upside guys there. And to your point, Group B to me is the most interesting. And I don't know if it is just there is a lot of people that have played fantasy for so long. And I think people find this out too when you play fantasy. Like, yeah, there's the rankings on NFL.com or ESPN or Sleeper, whatever your platform may be, but like you still go with your gut or with the guys that you think are going to break out or where you see great value. Like I don't really normally take a tight end early, but using Group B for example, Mark Andrews at the end of the 3rd round, like that's in my opinion was incredible value. So I had to take it. And maybe this is the right way to play fantasy football, but we had a Zoom chat with everybody on in the league. Not everybody could make the Zoom chat, but we opened it up to all 30 players. We could sit there and chat. And there was a bunch of people in there from my league. And I was sitting there like, how is this guy falling? Please don't make me draft him. The value is too good, but it will ruin I don't need a 5th wide receiver, but the value is too good. And that's something you do have to balance out as you're playing fantasy football. But at some point, the value is too good, and you still have to do it. Like I did with Mark Andrews, like Christian Watson, the number 1 wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, fell all the way to round 7-6. Like that's a high upside guy. Like there's a lot of players in that some people value a lot lower than others. And if you're convicted about one of those guys, go out and get them.
And sometimes you have to be fluid to the fact of, like, you could be like, don't someone take this guy. I don't want to take him because, like, I feel like it's too good a value and I can't let it pass. Sometimes you can use that to your advantage too. Cause honestly, right next to Cody, team 8, Kickers Lives Matter, that's actually Bree, my fiance's team. I could hear her talking literally from round 7 to round 10. She literally used I think I don't like this guy, but I feel like it's too good a value. Terry McLaurin normally I think goes round 5, round 6. J.K. Dobbins goes a round or 2 earlier. Jerry Jeudy, Michael Pittman, same thing. Like, she just kind of let the draft come to her at a point, and she was kind of like, I don't know if I like this draft because I don't necessarily like the players at their ADPs, but where she got them compared to where they usually go, the value is actually great.
Yeah, I know. Like to your point, like I took Alvin Kamara before she sniped J.K. Dobbins right in front of me at 8-3, and I was like, "There's no way J.K. Dobbins is here in the 8th round." Like, yeah, I know
And
Todd
Alvin
wants
Kamara the same way, but you mean you guys let the draft come to you in that round.
right, and I think that is important too. And I think you even saw it too. We've highlighted a lot about Group B, but if I scroll down here, you'll see we had one defense go in the first. What is this? Uh, 12 rounds. We had one defense. Where
Yep.
if I scroll over to Group A, they had they had 2 defenses go in round 9 alone. Then they had more in round 11 and 12. Like so, their defenses started going early. Not as high, but similar case in Group C. And that's where we talk about too. Like, and some of the defenses uh have to be, they viewed as these top defense. We talked a little bit about the 49ers, but like the Jets, everybody is talking about the Jets defense, how good they were last year. They're going to be elite this year. Yeah, but they also play Buffalo week 1. Like, do you really want to spend a pick in the 10th round to go get the Jets defense when you're probably going to want to spot start another defense later? Like, look at week 1, see those matchups. Like, if you just punt on the position, the Commanders play Arizona. You're going to start a different defense week 2, but the Commanders play Arizona week 1. So that's something to pay attention to. And also don't be afraid to, go out and get your guy, but also don't feel like you have to follow the action. Don't feel like you have to follow the trend when it comes to drafting, like we saw, in Group A with those defenses. Somebody took the 49ers defense, so someone's like, oh wait, well I have to get a defense, and they took the Philadelphia Eagles in round 9 when you still had player like Dalvin Cook went right after the Eagles defense. Like, that's still a guy that can make a difference. Yeah, there's some, like I talked about earlier, you're contradicting yourself after round 5 or 6. It's a crapshoot anyways. But take players that have higher upsides than a defense.
And I'll jump to Group C really fast. When it comes to not feeling like you have to jump on trends too, I want to talk about myself and Brandon, who is Team 4 Waddle. I forget his whole name. It's the Waddle team over there. Every single team in Group C had a quarterback by the middle of early in round 8. Yet Brandon and I still felt the need to wait even longer, and he didn't take his first quarterback on his roster until round 10, taking Daniel Jones. And I took it even further and let a lot of teams take backup quarterbacks and didn't take a quarterback until round 14. Took 2 to end my draft and didn't even take a defense because I had Jamison Williams. So similar to the kicker strategy that we typically talk about, if you take someone on PUP or on injured reserve, feel free to not take a kicker, add one later. No kickers in this league, just defenses. I went out there and decided to not take a defense, add someone with a good week 1 matchup, as opposed to having the Jets playing against the Bills, like Cody said. But I still ended up with Dak Prescott. So go ahead and answer me the question, Cody. So the team that took Tua in round 8, and I took Dak Prescott in round 14, how much of a drop-off is there between Tua and Dak Prescott?
You should have picked a different person. I really like Tua this year. He's like my sleeper
Okay,
guy.
go one. Okay, so was it 5 picks before that? The other team took a quarterback in Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence is a great comparison. I think people are I think Trevor Lawrence has potential to be like a top 5 fantasy quarterback. I really do. But I think he also comes with some potential to be very inconsistent, like a guy like Dak Prescott. I think you have some weeks where he throws 4 picks. I think there's some weeks where he goes for 400 yards. Like, I think it's going to be a roller coaster ride. Um, and maybe you paid a little extra for Trevor Lawrence because he plays in the NFC South compared to the FC or the AFC South compared to the NFC East, so he has a better schedule. Uh, but I don't think there's anything wrong with getting Dak Prescott. And to your point, I was going to mention quarterbacks as well as we start to wrap up here. Same thing happened in Group B with my team. Everybody in the league had a quarterback by round 8, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait. And now I did take a flyer on Deshaun Watson, just as to see what was going to happen with the Browns, and he still has some rushing ability. So I tried to see if he would still tap into that. Uh, wasn't like my top guy. Like, I think I still could have got Tua here, even though I just talked about him being one of my flyers. But I went a little different because I have a lot of shares at Tua in other places. Actually, no, I couldn't have. Tua went the round before me, so I couldn't take him anyway. So scratch that last point. But Dak Prescott went 5 picks after him. So to your point, like, you got him 4 rounds even after he was gone in Group B. So very, very diverse. And this is the fun part about fantasy, where every league is different. And that's why I think even if you're not playing in our World Cup, but you're checking out what we're doing on social media to talk about it, what we're doing on these bonus episodes of podcasts coming up this season, following along, I think it could be good for you to see how other leagues are being run, what other teams are doing. And it will also be, interesting to see how these different things play out. And I think that's what makes the World Cup such an exciting thing to be a part of. And yeah, it might only be, I don't know if George mentions at the top, but as you can see, we have 3 groups of 10-man leagues, but we're tracking win percentage across all 4 years, and that'll be tiebreakers, and that'll be bonus slots into that final World Cup selection as well. So we're not just playing against this league, we're also playing against other leagues, which adds an interesting twist.
Definitely, Cody. We still do have a little bit more time here. Is there any other draft strategies? Why did you take this person? Why didn't you take this person that you see throughout the rest of the leagues? I'm still kind of looking through, so I'll keep it on as well.
Yeah, I mean, we could go over about position and position about the disparity between, where some people were taken, some people weren't taken, and how much of, those middle tier rounds really change everything. Like we've talked about different players, some going around 6, some going in around 8. That's going to happen in every league. Um, I would say I'm not a huge fan of, if especially like I'll use Group B for example, like our good friend Marcus, he's been on the show a couple times. He went ahead and took a quarterback in round 3 in Jalen Hurts. And yes, I know the end of the rounds are just flyers and he's hoping for something, but he added 2 more quarterbacks in Anthony Richardson, which is the ultimate flyer of any fantasy quarterback this year. And then he grabbed Aaron Rodgers, which could be a top guy if depending on how he plays in New York this year. He's done it before. So he has, 3 guys that have extreme high upside, but this isn't a super flex league. This is a one quarterback league. So I'm already kind of against taking a backup quarterback, especially if you take one of those top guys like a Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. I would not recommend what you saw here in Group B, uh, taking 3. But Marcus always beats me in fantasy. Like we have a good rivalry going. So he's probably laughing as he's listening to this, like, huh, wait till I beat you with Anthony Richardson in my lineup. And just because I have 3 quarterbacks. So
Oh, on top of it, if you want to have even more, if you remember back to our last episode when we did like do's and don'ts for fantasy football, he also took Travis Kelce in round 1, followed up with a quarterback in round 3. As Cody literally last week said, don't take both positions in the first 5 rounds, just take one of the 2 or neither. So he totally went against everything you said. Still put together a fairly solid team. He got some decent upside in the middle round, so I think he's going to be okay. But
so
it
let me
was a risky way to draft, to say the least.
for sure. And if you're not on YouTube right now, I'm going to run through his team. I'm going to do it a little. I'll do it by the starting positions, not some what his projected week 1 starters would be, not the order that they were taken. But he has Jalen Hurts, and then his 2 running backs would be Tony Pollard and Dameon Pierce. Then, dude, my guy also took 2 tight ends too. That's interesting. In the first 6 rounds, just
Yep.
now realized that. So then his 2 starting wide receivers are Keenan Allen and Mike Evans, and then I'll give you 3 options for his 2 flex spots. Would be Kyle Pitts as the 3rd tight end, Javonte Williams, or Marquise Hollywood Brown. We talked a little bit about this. We were texting back and forth right after the draft happened. Me and Marcus were, and he talked about how he really liked his team. And I said, I think you have a good team, but for me, you have a lot of the old reliable guys in fantasy. So some people really like that strategy, with Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, and Hollywood Brown. But like, I don't think there's a ton of upside there. Like, I don't think any of them have capabilities to be, top 1, top 5 wide receivers this season. So I think that's an interesting strategy. He's going really big with the tight end, the quarterback, and maybe if Kyle Pitts breaks out because it is a double flex league and you can play a tight end there, if he's the wide receiver 2, he might be in every week flex for him because he has that high upside. Steph, a completely different strategy that I would have done or that we've seen out of Marcus. But I think that's also the fun part about fantasy is you can still make a very good case that this is a sub team. And
So
that's
let's
why we
keep it. Yeah. Sorry.
I was going to
So
say
I
that's
think
why we Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I
no.
talked enough.
You're good. I think there's 3 teams we should keep a tab on when it comes to tight ends and taking. So this is a 2 flex league as well, and the flex positions, both of them could play a tight end. You technically could play 3. I don't think anyone's ever going to play 3, but playing 2 is a possibility. So the 3 teams that I'm watching when it comes to that is Marcus's team having Kelce and Pitts. You can flip over to Group A. Sherbs, who picked 9 in that league, took Hawkinson and Kittle back to back in rounds 5 and 6. Those might even be an even stronger pair of tight ends that could play tight end flex pretty much every single week. And then in Group C, Bryn decent exposure. The team 10 took Darren Waller round 4, Kyle Pitts round 7. So know your scoring settings too. Know your ability to play positions wherever. If you don't like a wide receiver or running back at a current point, but you think a tight end has high upside like Kyle Pitts could, it's not out of the question to go out there and take a second tight end with high upside, hoping you can either get a trade out of it or you can still play him in that flex.
No, I think that's a great point, and I'll even throw my team in Group B on the list there. I have Mark Andrews, and it wasn't like I took another guy high. But I took David Njoku in the 10th round, who has some real high upside, and I paired that with my quarterback being Deshaun Watson. So if I needed someone in a pinch, I have a stackable tight end backup or a flex person. So because the double flex, because of not having a kicker in this league, which is how you should be playing fantasy, I took a second tight end. I typically don't do that because normally I don't get a top guy. I just take a flyer and I'm going to start them whichever week I feel like, and I'll pick some guys off the bench too. But I think we've seen all these different strategies. We've seen all the different layouts. So one last time, just in case you are, looking, I will go over, let you look at Group A while I'm talking. I'll move over to Group B and Group C. But I think the important thing to take away from is, yes, draft season is a lot of fun. It's a super exciting time. You love to see what players can you get, how you're going to do. You love to get those rankings from NFL.com or where they're projecting you to finish, whether it's 1-13 or 13-1. ESPN, Yahoo, Spur, they all do the same thing. But remember, your league is not won at your draft. We've talked about all these different strategies, how the different things lined up. And not one of the teams, if they're good owners, which being in the Couch GMs World Cup, we have some standards, so they should not be the same as they were at the end of the season as the ones they were drafted. You got to play your waiver wires. You got to, work the trade markets when you can. You have to be on top of the NFL news, and the best way to do that is check the Couch GMs podcast.
Yes, it is Cody. I feel like I kind of got stuck here, so you can go ahead and wrap us up.
I didn't know if there was any. I didn't want to just end the show because I kind of went on a little tangent there. In case you had any last any words or thought, but you're shaking your head no. So I will. Damn, I should. Oh, dang, I'm sorry. Scratch that. I should have just ended the show there with that subtle plug. But as always, make sure you check out the Couch GMs. Next week we'll be back previewing the NFL season. Football will be back on Thursday. We'll be back recording on Tuesday. Shot on Wednesday, doing our Super Bowl picks that we do every year and talking about what you can expect from the show all season long. For Couch GMs, I'm Cody Roadcap. That is George Kerth, and we will see you all next week.